Hi, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. So today I'm going to be talking about one of my absolute favourite albums of all time. I know this is happening quite a lot recently, but this what inspires this video is the latest release from Analogue Productions Atlantic 75th Anniversary series. And this is a double 45 RPM LP cut by Kevin Gray from the original Analogue master tapes and pressed at QRP. And I mean, Fragile is one of my all-time favourite Yes albums. I think I did recently do a video about favourite Yes albums, which I'll pop a link to up here if anyone's interested. The reasons this isn't actually my favourite, it's probably in my top, well, it's in my top 4, I would say, probably, or 5. But it's something that this release has kind of caused me to reconsider. So after listening to this album for around, I don't know, 46, 47 years or something since I first bought it, that's quite something. Anyway, what I'm referencing and comparing this to are 4 other copies on vinyl that I have, okay? So first of all, and obviously my benchmark is this UK original pressing. And if I just show you what this looks like front and back, and there's the inside, and you'll see on various other pressings how these vary, but this, my original UK, the booklet is actually stuck in. I've seen these both stuck in and loose on original pressings of this, and one of the ways you can tell an original pressing of this, because my first copy of this wasn't. My first copy was a sort of mid-70s reissue, which had the very familiar green and orange Atlantic label, and I was round at a friend's house back in the mid-80s, and he put Fragile on, and it just absolutely blew me away. And it was on this label here, which I mean I call Red and Plum, but this was the kind of original UK Atlantic label from, I think, 68 until 72. I might be a little bit out on those dates, but it blew me away, and I found a copy, or this copy, which is in absolutely spectacular condition, and it you know, the difference between this and a reissue is as big, I would say, as any of the differences in these records I'm going to talk about today. So I subsequently went out and also got the Yes album, Yes, and Time in a Word on this, label, original pressings. Then scratched my head, who else was around on Atlantic at that time? Of course, Led Zeppelin, so I went out and got Zeppelin 1, 2, 3, and 4 on this label. And again, they're all, Atlantic records of this era are really, really, really damn good. So if any reissue can even get close to this, it's doing a good job. If it can match it, it's doing a phenomenal job. If you can beat it, you just need to go and get one, hands down. It's an amazing feat. Okay, so this is my ultimate kind of benchmark, if you like. But I want to run through the other copies I've got. I think really what we'll do, just to keep this video from being ridiculously long, is I'm actually going to start off talking about the very most recent acquisition, because even though, I mean, this is quite laughable, but even though this is the reason for this video, and this was released early in January, I believe, it's just come out. This is not the most recent issue in this little roundup. The most recent issue in this roundup was actually released less than a week ago, last Friday, and it's a reprint of the 2015 Steven Wilson remix. So whereas all the other 4 copies of this that I'm going to be discussing are just remasters, they're all from the original tapes, directly or indirectly, they're all using the original mix. This one is actually a remix, and I was kind of very keen to hear these. I think Stephen Wilson did, I think he's done 5 Yes albums. I'm not entirely certain, but there was a box set of his reissues. I haven't got that. I've been looking for a copy because I, just as a Yes, absolute fanatical fanboy, I kind of wanted to hear whether I like it or not is another matter. I have heard them all in their digital versions, and wasn't particularly knocked out, but I wanted to hear it on vinyl just to give it, the acid test, so to speak. So I was quite delighted to see this come out, and of course it's very timely for this review. I will point out this cost me £40 for a single LP on fancy green vinyl, it has to be said. But if you look at the label there, you can see it says Fragile 2015 Stephen Wilson remix. So this is not a new Stephen Wilson remix, it's the 2015 one, just repressed, as I'll say, on fancy clear vinyl and being sold for £40. So far from cheap. Anyway, I'll just start off by sort of talking about how this sounds, because it was, it was of great interest to me. So if we start off, let's just talk about Roundabout, really, because it's a phenomenal track. I'm sure all of you know this album who are watching this video. If you don't, look it up on Spotify or whatever you use, Tidal, Cobuzz. Roundabout, the opener, is just it's as full-on prog rocking Yes as you ever get. Then you've got Cans and Brahms, which is Rick Wakeman's own little sort of classical sort of novelty, if you like. And this album is made up of what I would say is 4 full band rocking phenomenal numbers. Roundabout, South Side of the Sky, Long Distance Runaround, and Heart of the Sunrise. Heart of the Sunrise is, again, it's probably my favourite track on the album. Another South Side of the Sky is phenomenal. Long Distance Runaround is phenomenal too. And then you've got these, I think it's 4 or 5 Cans and Brahms. That's Rick Wakeman's. Like I said, it's classical. It's sort of taken from Brahms' Fourth Symphony, keyboard sort of solo. We Have Heaven is John Anderson's little sort of solo, multi-tracked vocal sort of, it's a lovely little thing. On side 2, we have 5% for Nothing, which is Bruford's very sort of jazzy, spiky kind of sort of off-time type of tune. And then The Fish, which is kind of Chris Squire's little sort of, amazing sort of almost sort of jazz rock bass solo. I mean, the Bruford's thing is very much sort of jazz inspired too. And then Mood for a Day is Howell's kind of classical guitar kind of styled little sort of solo slot. And actually those solo slots are what, for me, I know for some they sort of break up and vary the album in a beautiful way. And, I know for a lot this is their favourite Yes album. For me, it probably stops it being my favourite Yes album, because the 4 phenomenal albums, the songs are just absolute epic. But I will get on to that when we sort of get towards the end of this. It's changing feelings about that actually possibly change where I would rank this as my, in my favourite Yes albums. But anyway, this is the Stephen Wilson one. So the start of Roundabout, you start off with it. I mean, I'm not sure what it is. It almost sounds like a piano decay in reverse. It's sort of like whoom, and the whoom swing kind of thing is very definitely a sort of guitar picked note, and then there's a sort of little sort of melody of guitar picked notes, which sort of repeats with another one of these sort of big sort of sucking out the energy of. As I say, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it almost sounds like I'm sure it's a keyboard effect, but it almost sort of sounds like it's in reverse, being sucking the sort of energy. It's phenomenal. And then you sort of got this, as I said, there's a sort of little guitar, and then just phenomenal, the bass and the drums, and a sort of a strummed sort of guitar kick in, but it's the bass predominantly really and the drums that absolutely drive this and hold it together. And I think of Yes at this era, it really is. It's Chris Squire and Bill Bruford, and what they do is it's that bloody good. It is phenomenal. Thundering sort of bass and sort of slidey kind of jazzy sort of drums. It's definitely not just sort of thundering rock type of thing from Bill. It's quite incredible. And I think how each of these pressings handle that sort of sparse, crystalline, sort of picked sort of guitar opening, the big sucking of that crescendo kind of thing, and then when the band comes in, and really how it handles the bass more than anything really is kind of what's paramount here. Well, I say the bass, the drums, cymbals obviously part of the drums, but again, some of these sort of mute the cymbals to some degree. Some really screw up the bass drum, the kick drum, and of course you've got John Anderson's very distinctive vocal, which some think of as just high pitched, but I find it very soft, very kind of smoky, husky. He does sing at the sort of, higher than I can sing. Well, I can't sing full stop anyway. But anyway, that's sort of how I think you need to judge Fragile and the various pressings, and it's how I'm going to do it. So here you are, with this Stephen Wilson remix, that initial opening bit, the sort of the guitar sort of picked guitar notes and that sort of big sucking sort of crescendo, almost reverse crescendo. That's all very clear and very nice and very clean and very dynamic sounding. And then it's when the band sort of really starts, that's where it kind of loses it. Now, all of these versions kind of keep Chris Squire's bass, which is incredibly growly and deep and funky and just, quite jaw-droppingly good. They all keep it reasonably good, but some do sort of get it a little bit muddled and fudgy. But on this particular press, this one here, I think it really kind of loses that. Chris Squire's bass is not well handled. It hasn't kind of got the weight that I would expect in it, but it's more Bill Bruford's drums, and it's mostly the kick drum. On all the best copies, you've got a very natural sounding kick drum, and as I say, Bruford's drumming it's sort of slip slidey like a ninja amongst, sort of playing around Chris Squire's phenomenal bass playing. The bass drum, kick drum on this, it's been EQ'd some way, and that's the thing I suppose about remixing. It's not like Stephen Wilson's taken this and completely made a different song. It actually sounds very similar. But what he's been able to do by sort of taking the individual stems or individual, multi-track tracks, it's clearly he's taken like the kick drum and he's EQ'd it. And I think what he's done is he's cut out low bass and sort of forced the upper bass side of it. So it, on a more modest system, maybe it sort of pops a bit more, but that's exactly what it does. I've got Kerr Acoustic K100 speakers, which are full range studio monitors. They've got a very, very high quality Pro 12-inch bass driver from Volt at the end of a very long, well constructed third wave transmission line, and they go deep with an awful lot of power and an awful lot of speed. My room is also treated very extensively with GIK acoustic panels, bass traps, etc. Walls, ceiling, the lot. So there's very, very little bass. So in my system, in my room, bass goes well down below 20 hertz, evenly, with immense power and punch, and no overhang. So you really get to hear what's going on. But on this, it's sort of like pop. It's weird. It just sounds broken. So it might sound great on a sort of a mid-fi type of system, But for me, it just doesn't sound good. And also John's voice is a bit sort of hollowed out on here. And again, I don't want John to sound sort of thin and squeaky. I want him to sound sort of warm and smoky and husky. He's got a Bradford accent, and he's got a stunningly beautiful voice. One of my favourite voices of all time. So unfortunately for me, this is a miss. And I was really hoping I would, like it just as a kind of an alternative, novel, interesting kind of remix. Look at it, okay? So sadly a miss. I'd probably go out and buy it anyway again, just because it is a remix. It's interesting. It is just interesting to hear someone else's take on it, even though I don't like it very much. Okay, so that's the Stephen Wilson. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about is actually by far the most expensive of this bunch. And I think this was actually probably the first video I did on this channel, or when I really sort of started doing it, in earnest. I got this from David Brooke at the Vinyl Adventure. And he said, "Oh, why don't you do a video on it, pal?" So I did. But at that time, it was just an unboxing video. I didn't do a full review. And for anyone who doesn't know, this is Mobile Fidelity. They get the original masters. What I didn't know, if anyone goes back and has a look at this video, I did. I'll be wittering on about how this is AAA all the way direct from the original master tapes. Of course, at that time, I didn't know that Mobile were pulling a bit of a fast one. And actually what they did was they got the original master, but they copied it to DSD. And then from that DSD, remastered it and cut it at 45 RPM onto their super vinyl. And I'll show you what you get in the box. Okay, so it's a very nice thing. It's all embossed with gold leaf, etc., etc. I don't suppose it's real gold for that matter. Here's the book. As I mentioned before, that comes in all of these. That's their sort of cover, which is just a single sheet. That's not so nice. This is the, kind of misleading, fraudulent, whatever you want to call it. It explains very well the lacquer convert vinyl versus the standard approach. But what this doesn't indicate is the DSD step in there. And then you've got two records because it's 45 RPM. And they are very, very nicely pressed. There's no question. The vinyl's quiet. But how does this one sound? So in terms of detail, it's frankly, it's beautiful. But there are things which really kind of prevent it from being one of my favourites. Now, there's something about MoFi, and it works wonderfully on some recordings and it works quite detrimentally on others, there is a sort of a slight house sound, I think it's fair to say, with MoFi, and that is that they'll generally EQ up the bass a little bit. So let's take this back to that beginning bit where you've got the sort of the swing, ding, 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 etc. That initial growling kind of whatever it is sound, as I say, sounds like backwards piano decay. I really don't know what it is, but anyway, something Rick's up to, I've got no doubt, on his keyboards. There's a second level somewhere underneath there, a second note, a second tone, a second sound, very deep down, that's sort of growling away, which just isn't on any of the other versions at all, not at all. And I think it's probably something which was present, on the recording. It might be just basically kind of, unwanted room noises. You've heard about classical recordings recorded where you've got tube chain noises and things like that, or buses rumbling past. It sounds very much like that. It totally sounds like it shouldn't be there, but I think because of the EQing, it's actually brought it up into the audible domain. Now, as I mentioned before about my speakers, they go deep and low. So it's quite possible that almost no one else, unless you've got speakers that go as deep and low as mine, will even hear this. And if that's the case, this might sound fantastic. But it doesn't just end with that. So once you get into the once the band joins in, and you've got that sort of, the bass is just absolutely, it's gritty, it's growly, and it's absolutely agile. I mean, Chris Squire is an absolute god of bass guitar. The meat, the gritty, grinding, driving part of Roundabout and South Side of the Sky and Heart of the Sunrise particularly is probably my favourite song I mentioned. It's impressive. This thing has got weight and detail and grit and growl to it. But with that sort of EQing up of the bass, again, as I said, on my system it just doesn't quite fit. But along with that, again, is a scooping out of John's vocal, because John, he's just got the most beautiful voice, but it just sounds a little bit hollow and a little bit distant and a little bit lacking energy. For me, that's the MOFI. Phenomenally detailed, massive amount of bass weight, but I think probably not exactly the most natural bass weight. And there's also that thing which, I'm sure that the Stephen Wilson is remixed digitally, absolutely convinced of it, I'm sure it is. But there's something about sort of, that little digital fingerprint of things. And I think it's sort of in the way that the music breathes, the way that sort of microdynamics happen. And you, instead of feeling like you've got this soup that you have to sort of pull the crescendos and the transients out of, they just naturally burst from. This one kind of feels just that little bit like it's almost like the music is existing underneath an elastic bed sheet, and it's sort of every element has just got something just sitting on it, holding it back, maybe controlling it. Maybe you could argue it's sort of removing noise or removing distortion, but for me it's adding a filter, really, adding something that's just slightly holding it back. And for me, I think the way music breathes is perhaps one of the most wonderful things about music. One other thing I'll say about this as you probably just noticed there, this lovely, beautiful, soft finish box shows fingerprints like nothing on earth. So anyway, that's the MOFI. Wonderful in many respects, by far the most expensive. Wonderful in many respects, but it's not my absolute favourite. Now, the next one coming up for me is actually the surprise of the group. Now, I bought this a little over a year ago, and to be honest, it sat there in my in pile, and I hadn't actually even opened it until last week. But this is also an Atlantic 75th anniversary copy, and this is published sort of directly by Rhino rather than, Rhino is the publishing kind of company of all this, so, this is all thanks to Rhino, and so's this. Now, the really interesting thing here is this version here is cut by Kevin Gray from the original Analogue Masters. Exactly the same as the Analogue Productions one. It's not pressed at QRP, it's not pressed on black vinyl, and it's not 45 RPM. Now, for some people, and I can well understand this will be my top recommendation because it's 33 RPM. You don't have to swap sides, halfway through side one, as it were, and halfway through side two. But this is a real surprise and really interesting. So as I say, cut by Kevin Gray, apparently from the Analogue tapes. And how does it sound? It sounds wonderful. It really does. It's open, it's bright in a colourful, airy, beautiful. And this is like the opposite of what I was saying about that kind of rubber elastic sheet almost. That's what I mean about the brightness of this. It's not tinny. It doesn't hurt your ears, but it's got life. It breathes. It's really, really, really quite impressive. Now, next up, I will get to my original, and it doesn't beat the original. It doesn't have the depth of colour, if you like. It's sort of a narrowed sort of colour gamut. It's dynamic. it's detailed, it's energetic, it's basically it's everything you want. And if it was just a review of this and the only other copy I had was the original, whilst this doesn't sound as good as the original, mine's a Near As Damn It Mint UK original from 1971. You find another one of those. You can, finding another original is not that hard, but finding one in really, really, really good nick, that's another ask. So to have a kind of comparatively regular LP, I think this was less than £30 when I bought it, a regular LP, freely available, cut from the original tapes by Kevin Gray, who is definitely in my top 2 or 3 cutting engineers worldwide, full stop. This sounds splendid. It is absolutely highly recommended. There's nothing I can say against this whatsoever. So, hats off to Kevin Gray. This is an absolute winner. But it only gets better from here on in, okay? Next up, I'm going to talk about my original again, because this is kind of where it fits. And, obviously people will be adding 2 and 2 and coming up with the correct answer. So this one here, how does this compare with the Kevin Gray, the crystal clear one? It's just, I've been listening to it for 45 years plus. First thing is, it sounds right, okay? This is the original. There is more kind of colour, a more accurate kind of timbre to everything. The drums, the voices, the cymbals, just a little bit more sort of energy and bite and attack. The drums are just a little bit, more sort of, resinous, so to speak. The guitars, a little bit more colour. And John's voice, just a little bit more husky. Tiny. We're talking tiny amounts. I don't think, unless you were doing an A-B demo between the two of these, you would really notice much difference. So, this is the reference, and that crystal clear version gets, I would say, admirably close for what is in essentially an ordinary reissue. I mean, it's not ordinary in so much as it's cut from analog tapes by Kevin Gray, but it's ordinary in so much as it's just from a major label. It's not even part of the Rhino Hi-Fi series. And as I say, I can't remember exactly how much it cost me, but, £25-30, something like that. So, this is a killer, frankly. But anyway, that's the original. It's, obviously I'm never going to get rid of the original because it's, the sentimental value as much as anything else. But now, here we go, finally, the one we've been waiting for. So this is, as I say, we've already come across one phenomenal Kevin Gray analog cut, and here we have another. And really, the main difference between these two is he's cut this one at 45 RPM rather than at 33, and those 45 RPM discs are pressed on, really beautiful vinyl, 180 gram vinyl at QRP, which is one of the world's greatest record pressing plants. Now, I will just pull out one of these records. You get all sorts of stuff in here. There's their booklet, which again is very nicely printed. So here we go. You can see we've got Roundabout and Cans and Brahms, and then on the other side we have Heaven and South Side of the Sky. And as I was saying about the major pieces here, so Roundabout 8 minutes 29 seconds, Cans and Brahms 1 minute 35. We have Heaven, which is the Anderson little sort of solo 130, South Side of the Sky 804. So it really is 5 individual little sort of palette cleansers, if you like, amuse-bouche, and then 4 substantial courses. And, one of the other things is that this, by doing this over 4 sites, you don't have to go anywhere remotely near the label. So, as you probably know, records always sound better towards the outer edge of the record. The groove is travelling much faster stylus to groove velocity is much faster, just higher resolution. Now, how does this one sound? Well, frankly, astonishing. I mean, this, with all these different versions, this took a good sort of 2 or 3 days, this whole listening session. And when we got listening with my wife Jo, when we got round to this one, we put on that opening of Roundabout. It has the sort of the I'll put that away in a minute. It has the dynamic sort of clarity and the sort of crystalline sort of purity of those sort of picked guitar notes, as good as any of them. But only this and the original had the absolute kind of colour, timbral sort of texture and quality of that sort of opening picked guitar sound. But there's another thing here. It's about, between those sort of picked notes, you'll hear the decay of each note, and that again, that's something that really delineates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And it is sort of like, ding, 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 ding. How each note ends and you're held before the next one kind of comes in is it's how it sort of holds your heart, how it holds, what physical, emotional, spiritual kind of state it puts you into. And this one, it actually sort of delves deeper into that realm than the original, and that's why this one is sitting at the top of the tree. But then when the dum 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 dum, just when that starts, it's just the growl of the bass, the weight of the bass, the speed and the agility, and then the sort of the slip slidey kind of drums and the cymbal work, and it's just amazing. And then you've got this sort of very basic sort of strummed sort of guitar in the left channel that sort of, it makes up the tune. I mean, the tune is made up of, obviously, you've got a quite simple sort of strummed guitar line, obviously the vocals, keyboards sort of kind of come in with little flourishes, but the real kind of kingpin of the band is that bass and drum, and nothing kind of quite gets the sort of the slip slidey sort of just absolute wonderment of Bill Bruford's drumming and cymbal work, percussion. This really does beat the original in that respect. And the sort of the clarity of the sort of there'll be a little keyboard sort of element here, a flourish on one side or the other side, or a sort of little guitar riff. It's not so much a riff but the elements come together with this with such clarity and such sort of dynamism, if that's a word. The decay of the individual notes, sort of picked guitar notes on the intro, it holds you and it keeps you in a sort of a mental state that just utterly entrances. And that's, like I said, so I know there's an awful lot of people would say about this and the MOFI that I don't want it on 45 RPM. I don't want to be jumping up halfway through each side and swapping it over. Now, with the MOFI, I did find out. I mean, I've had that MOFI for 3 or 4 years now, and I've probably played it 2 or 3 times. And each time it's sort of like more of a, oh yeah, listen to that extra detail. Oh yes, listen to that layering. Yes, but it's not a sort of a spiritual, just holy cow, just phenomenally in there with the music. With this one, as I say, me and my wife, we put it on, and we were typically going from track to track, across each, playing a track off this, track off that, track off, and so on and so forth. But we got to this one and we put it on, Roundabout played out, Cans and Brahms played out, and and this is what I'm saying about those other, the five little sort of interludes. It was like, it's almost like hearing them for the first time. You know, absolutely captivated with intrigue listening to them, and then the main courses kind of come in, and you just, I mean, honestly, we just played through all four sides, just jaw dropped open, literally tears in our eyes, and then for the next day, sort of humming away various earworms, and it's a funny thing with earworms, but you kind of know which version that even that's exactly the same music. You know which version it is that put those in your head, and it was this one. It is astonishing. It is better than the original pressing, and the original pressing of this album is phenomenal. So this is absolutely something else. I would say it's every bit as good as The Trick of the Tail that I talked about very recently, which also just wipes the floor with the original. I mean, to be honest, The Lamb Lies Down wipes the floor with the original, and so on and so forth. The Yes album does. I mean, with the Yes album, for instance, the Yes album was probably my favourite Yes album on balance. And so, yeah, the new version is just jaw-droppingly stunning. But with this wasn't my favourite Yes album to start with. But this has given me kind of a new insight into the whole album and those elements of it, the five sort of instrumental, if you like, well, not instrumentals, solo, and even that's in inverted commas because they're not strictly speaking solos. But I'll still keep them. I'll still keep my original for sort of posterity, and I'll probably keep the clear, 75th anniversary 33 RPM cut because it sounds phenomenal, and you can just chuck it on and play the whole thing through with just one swap of sides. But for the ultimate listening experience, there's no question that this is the one. It's stunning, absolutely stunning. Yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough. On that note, I'll say cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. My subscription numbers are going up through the roof of 5,600 at last count, which is amazing. Thank you all for subscribing, new and old, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you again. Bye now. Bye.